Hey all, it's Darcy. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And I've been meaning to film this video for a while now, and I feel like now is a good time to do so. If you're new here, I graduated from NYU in May of 2019, so not quite a year ago when you're watching this, if you're watching this when it just went up. And I was a transfer student, so I was actually only at NYU for a year and a half, but regardless, still an NYU grad and learned a lot while I was at NYU, but probably not everything I could have known. So yeah, also I'm in a new background. I like angled myself differently today because I always film on my bed. So let me know what you think. I feel like the bed is more cozy vibes, but I don't know. Like kind of liking it. So today I am answering the wonderful question of, did NYU prepare me for post-grad life? And you know, a lot of YouTubers have been graduating and a lot of them have been, you know, doing influencing full-time. However, my channel is not big enough for that. That's all right. I would love to do it full-time, but you know what, I am #relatable because I can't do this full-time. So I thought I would talk about my experience, you know, kind of working full-time out of school and like what things have been like since graduating, and you know, if I feel like NYU prepared me. So I feel like the first thing I want to touch on is that the answer to this question is yes and no, which is often the case with all of the NYU critique videos I make, or you know, NYU related videos where I'm answering questions about it. And so the answer is yes, it prepared me, but no, it didn't prepare me. Like, there's certain things it did and certain things it didn't. So I'm gonna get into it. The biggest thing I think it prepared me for is living alone in New York. If I had moved to New York after graduating from some other school somewhere else and had to adjust to the city and full-time life, I think it would have been a lot for me. I think I could have done it, but I felt like the transition was very smooth for me because I had moved in the city twice. I had, you know, adjusted to the lifestyle here. I had to use the subways, like where to buy food, just like all of these basic things I was already adjusted to. So, you know, I moved right as I was graduating. I was all set in my apartment as I started my job. I was used to the city, learned my commute really fast, you know, how to get there, and all of that was smooth sailing. And I think adjusting to New York in a school setting where you have those supports, you know, having straight up NYU housing, you know, meal plan, like all of those elements taken care of, you know, being able to walk the city but then also learn the subways for certain aspects of your lifestyle. I feel like that's a big asset that maybe people don't talk about enough, for if you do want to live here long term, which many NYU students do. Many of them stay in New York. So I think that is a big asset of kind of moving into post-grad life. If you are, you know, living in New York still, then it's good. It's good. Then the next thing I will say is that NYU has a vast pool of alumni, which is true for many big schools, but like I said, a lot of people do stay in New York, so I feel like no matter where you go, there's gonna be NYU grads. And it is an instant connection you make with someone, and even if it's not a direct grad, almost everyone knows someone who went to NYU. Like people, you know, people be like, oh yeah, my daughter went there, oh yeah, my friend went there, oh yeah, my cousin, my niece, my nephew, like whatever it is, almost everyone knows someone from NYU. Even if it's like a coworker, like you just, the connections are real. The fact of the matter is, when I look on LinkedIn, because on LinkedIn you can see if people from your school have, you know, are working at said company. Literally every company I look at, pretty much, unless it's like a 2-person company, has NYU grads, and not just one, like multiple. You know, the bigger the company, obviously the bigger the amount, but it's crazy, like just because the school is so big and so many people stay in New York. You know, if you are looking for long-term career growth here, the school, regardless of what you study, like instant connection. And I did get my first job out of school from an NYU career fair, because you know, the company I was working at, they did really like NYU grads. I think that is a big element, is people know the name NYU. I've talked about this before. The name value of the school is what you're paying for, and it is an asset. You're paying for that. It's very expensive, but you are getting your worth from that name brand, versus there are plenty of other great schools in New York like Hunter, Baruch, the New School, and they just don't have the same name brand value. And I mean, I can't really compare them academically speaking. They're just on very different levels in terms of the I don't know what the word is. I mean, NYU has just infinitesimal programs when you factor in Gallatin, and you know, locations all over the world. So you know, certainly there is that whole aspect that brings it to the next level in terms of schools. But yeah, I don't know, that name brand value does make a difference, and having NYU at the top of my resume looks good. People know it's a good school, they know you're smart from that. So that's definitely an asset when you are thinking about your plans post-graduation. And you can even still use a lot of the resources as an alum. I went to an NYU career fair again recently. Certainly, you know, some of the actual student elements, you can't really get into buildings again, but I still have my NYU ID because it hasn't expired, so I still use it a lot actually for like museums and stuff. Shh, don't tell. But even if your ID expires when you actually graduate, because you're not a transfer who graduated early, there's still so many other things of like reaching out to, you know, other alumni, reaching out to professors, you know, staying in touch with professors. I've stayed in touch with some of my professors from journalism school who work at major companies and surely know people, and I haven't gotten a job directly, but you know, they've been references, great resources. So I think a big part of NYU is the people, because people who work at NYU do a lot of other things in the city, and it's just such a great asset to get out there and get after it. So one thing in terms of more of the academics, because I've just been talking about the school in general, but if you don't know, I studied journalism and sociology in the College of Arts and Sciences, so sort of a humanities and media background, and I'm sure it differs school to school, but in terms of the actual things I learned, I feel like I use the skills more than the actual knowledge, which, I mean, that's part of college, I guess, in a way, to a certain extent. You are learning the skills, but you kind of forget that in the moment. So I do think I use a lot of the independent thinking skills and problem solving skills and deadline driven skills in a way after graduation. Not as much the actual things I study, but that's also because I'm not like working as a reporter right now. I still use like the writing skill set that I developed though almost every single day, and just I think the critical thinking skills, like I definitely think I'm still a very sociological thinker in how I approach things, which I think is an asset. And I mean, you know, studying those types of things, it does give you the tools to be an independent thinker, which I see as an asset. I think it depends on, you know, kind of the context you're working in if it's an asset. So yeah, that kind of leads me into my next point, which is that it really depends on the company and the context, how much they value sort of that mindset of being independent versus like being very teamwork driven. You know, I think throughout many of our educations, we've been in team projects where people don't pull their own weight and will complain about that kind of thing. But the reality is, in the real world, there are still team projects, you know? So in terms of that, school does prepare you because you know kind of how to deal with things and handle people. But at the same time, it literally does not prepare you for the real world and how to deal with people. I think for me, that is the biggest thing that, as many of you know, I can't legally talk about, but yeah, that's the tea right there. A little of kind of, you just like can't be prepared for that out of school though, you know, just the way like office politics works. I think there's school politics and how you deal with professors, but you know, it's everything changes when you're in a full-time office position, or you know, whatever kind of position you're in. It's different. So yeah, NYU did not prepare me for that element of the real world. Like, there's no office politics class, unfortunately. And if there was, no one would want to take it because it sucks. But that's just the reality of things in a way. And I mean, that's all I'm gonna say about that. But that's probably my biggest takeaway of what I was not prepared for. And then the other thing I feel like NYU doesn't teach is some of those adulting skills. I just made a video about adulting. You should go check it out. Essentially, I think they don't really teach a lot of like how to take care of yourself and financial skills, and this is true across schools for the most part, but like, you know, how to do your taxes, like no one teaches you that, how to get a credit card, Like most of those things I've learned because of my parents, and like my parents learned just like, you know, through their own trial and error, and like, you know, having a financial advisor, some of those things. So but you know, maybe if your family doesn't come from like a well-off background, you're gonna have to learn those things on your own, and that's the type of thing that it'd be great if schools taught. It's a very practical skill that everyone will use. And I mean, you know, I've kind of been able to balance my finances. Sorry, the lighting is changing. But I feel like not everyone knows how to do that out of school, and they definitely don't really teach you that in school from a concrete way. Everyone just has different practical knowledge of it. So that is one thing that is different post-grad, where you lose the security of, I don't know, being in a college setting where you aren't necessarily as independent. Certainly there's a ton of financial stuff that comes with being in college because it's so freaking expensive. So I mean, in some ways maybe it prepares you, but doesn't really. I feel like if anything it's a detriment because so many people graduate with huge student loans and have to deal with that hanging over their head. And yeah, so I feel like I was relatively well prepared for post-grad life. I mean, I'm doing pretty well overall. And I do think I can apply a lot of the things I learned. Like one other thing is you don't think about, you know, you can do jobs you didn't study, because I was working in marketing, never took a single marketing class, knew basically nothing about marketing, probably couldn't even define it for you at the time. And so since, you know, kind of looking back on my marketing experience, I realized that my journalism background helped a lot in terms of my writing skills, but it also helped in terms of knowing how to write for a specific publication or voice, because that is a big part of marketing, is reflecting a brand, and a publication is a brand. So, you know, you can apply a lot of skills you don't necessarily realize in school to other things, because there's so many different jobs out there, and especially in the J school, they're so focused on people being reporters or broadcast journalists that they don't think about like journalism can be applied to so many things. And no matter what your major is, you know, I don't think that's the end all be all of what your career is going to look like. So maybe more so if you're like an engineering student, but I think very much so for humanities students, and you know, maybe some of the more art scene kind of students, you know, it can be applied to a lot of different things. So if you came to this video to decide if NYU is worth it, I actually have a separate video on that. I've made so many videos on NYU, guys. Like, this is probably gonna be one of my last ones, if not the last one. But I do feel like NYU did help me in my post-grad life. Not everything it could have been, but it's impossible for it to have been. Like, you just, real world, I hate that term as I've said before, but being beyond college is just different no matter what. Just like the high school to college transition, but you're still in an academic setting versus, you know, life is just, it's very different after college and after schooling, and you know, there's only so much you can do to prepare for that. So were there things I would have loved to learn in school? Yes, but part of the process is just growing pains of, you know, figuring out life, supporting yourself at a company, whatever, however you live your life after graduating, no judgment here. Yeah, so comment down below if you have questions. I mean, I'm sure there are things I didn't address that maybe people are wondering. These are kind of just the things that come to the forefront of like things I feel like went really well, things that did not go well, of how my college experience prepared me for post-grad life. So yeah, go NYU people, violets. That's not really a mascot, but yeah. Subscribe if you're not already, and check out some of my other NYU videos if you're interested, and I will see you all next time. And I mean, I was, you know, doing